What's up, YouTube? Chris from TCG Battles Slash Collections here, and here with another video. Hopefully, I have another video going up later today. Hopefully, at the same time as this one. But anyway, let's get started. This will be my blaster deck profile for standard. Basically, my Cyanic blaster. So, without further ado, I'm just gonna get started with the video. I'm not gonna take up your time. There are some cards that I am planning to replace, but bear with me with some of them. First off, a standard for this deck, Arcsaber Dragon. I run 3. I started with 4, but I moved on to, but I took one out for another card. Arcsaber is a pretty standard card, a little costly and hard to set up, but if you can set it up, it gives you a good early game pressure. Its first ability is if on Vanguard and in the drop zone you have 3 different blasters, its grade is decreased by 1, making it a grade 3, which makes it easier to ride. You don't have to wait an extra turn to ride this card. You can bring them out, Soul Blast 3, its second skill, Soul Blast 3, Counter Blast 3, Superior Call 3 blasters in total from your hand, deck, drop zone, and damage zone, and soul. So you have 5 areas to go with. Now, the rulings for this card honestly helped out a lot. If you're going to call a card from a blaster from the damage zone, it has to be face up, because if it's face down, you have no confirmation that it's really a blaster when the ability is active. Now, if you already have 3 cards in your soul, then that is also somewhat costly because you're down the soul call. And if you have no face-up cards in your damage zone, you have no cards to call from the damage zone, which leaves your hand, your deck, and your drop zone. Now calling a card from your hand is kind of costly in a sense, because you're going to need you need more cards in your hand, especially if this guy's your first ride. Now, it's a pretty good card, 14k base power, which makes it difficult to beat over. But still not the best card in the deck. It's still a great starter if you can get it out. If you can get it out in the late game, that's great too. Next up, for the grade 4s, I run 2, Exculpate the Blaster. Now, in total, when the set was released, it gave us 5 new blasters. Blaster Blade was 6. This makes 7. The reason I add this on is not only because if I want to do an all-out finishing move to take out all my opponent's resources and ride Blaster Blade for a second Vanguard attack. This can also be called to rearguard if you have Arcsaber Dragon as your Vanguard, or you can use its skill to call it from the deck or the drop zone. And it can also be called using Messianic Blaster's ability if you drive check it. This gives more variety and more of a chance for you to get out the blasters for your overall finishing combo plays. And it will give bonus power to Messianic for his ability. Speaking of Messianic, he is the only grade 3 in this deck, unfortunately. But he is, honestly, the finisher of the deck. Exculpate is kind of a backup if you're running out of blasters, but Messianic, his ability is obvious to everyone, and it's a staple for a blaster deck. This guy gets the power and critical of all blasters on the rear Vanguard, on every blaster out there, as long as there's 6 or more, with different names. So you need him, let's say, you need Messianic, Blaster Blade, Blaster Arrow, Blaster Dagger, Blaster Rapier, and Blaster Javelin, or Exculpate to replace one of them. He'll gain all their power and critical. Every time I get him out, his power is well over 70,000, and he'll have 7 critical. And yes, his ability does include his own power and critical. Combined with force markers, this guy is a very heavy hitter and a card your opponent has to guard. If they have no perfect guards, they'll have to waste their whole hand to block this, because this card's going to hit for game no matter what if you get it out. Even if you bring it out during your first grade 3 ride and you have your field set up, that's ideal. If you have your field set up from the start, this guy can finish off your opponent in 1 attack if they don't guard, or if you're able to do anything. The second ability, when you drive check a blaster, Superior Call to an open rearguard circle. Now this does limit his ability a bit. If it was just to rearguard, then he would be insanely overpowered, because you can replace any other unit that isn't a blaster on rearguard, or a blaster that is weaker, thus making it even stronger. But yeah, really good card. Has good resource searching and staple for the deck. Moving on to grade 2s. The obvious grade 2 Blaster Blade. Any Royal Paladin deck at this moment sucks unless you have Blaster Blade. Ideally, you want them as your first Vanguard and to have at least 4 other rear guards out there in order to get the bonus critical at the start of the game. If you manage to get that, you will have an early game rush with Blaster Blade. I don't really need to explain it, but Blaster Blade is staple for any Royal Paladin deck at this point. Next up, 4, Blaster Rapier. I honestly really love this card. When it attacks, check the top card, place it on top or the bottom. This helps you check for triggers, or it'll play off with Messianic, and you get to search the top of your deck for a blaster card that you can call with this card. So always attack. So if you have Messianic out, always attack with this card first. Check the top card. If it's a trigger, leave it on top. If it's a blaster that isn't already on the rear guard, and you have an open rear guard circle, leave it on the top. And its continuous ability, if you have 6 blasters with different names on the field, 15k power. So it's a 25k beater if you have 6 different blasters out. Really strong card. Requires a lot of setup like a lot of the other cards in this deck, but it needs to be in here. It's one of my favorite blasters out of them so far. Next up, Blaster Arrow. Another staple for the deck. This card, what was it again? Yes, yeah, this card can't be chosen by opponent's card effects if there are 6 blasters with different names. Simple. Then, when you call this card, if you have 3 or more units with blaster and their different card names, drop a card and add an Arcsaver Dragon to your hand. So, if you have Blaster Blade out on the rear guard, just do a counter blast, drop a card and add Arcsaver to your hand. It's an Arcsaver setup. But no one really uses that ability because at that point you either have Arcsaver or Messianic in your hand. But a good thing about this is that if you have no grade 3 in your hand, you don't have Messianic or Arcsaver, use his ability to drop a blaster, then add Arcsaver to your hand, and when your opponent attacks, intercept with this, or let your opponent destroy it. This way, it'll help set up Arcsaver sooner. Doesn't happen too often for me, because my opponents are wary, but it's a good setup card. Next up, for the grade 1s, Blaster Javelin. So, first ability, during the battle it boosted, if you have 6 or more blaster, if your Vanguard is a blaster or an Arcsaver, it gets an extra 2,000. So it's a 10k booster. Not that big of a deal, but it's still pretty good. Its second ability is that if you have 6 or more units with blaster on the field, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and bind it. That card helps take out your opponent's resources. Always keep it in your deck. Next up, we have 4, Blaster Dagger, and this is the card that that is obviously needed for this deck to work. Its first ability is pretty standard, and it's honestly its defining trait. If you have 6 units with blaster and the different card names on the field, all of your units gain boost. This makes like cards like Blaster Blade, Blaster Arrow, Messianic, and even Exculpate capable of boosting. This sets up some high power. This will help set up some high powered columns for the late game. And again, if you can set this up on your first grade 3 ride, even better. Its second ability is that when the attack of your Vanguard with Blaster or Arcsaver in its name hits a Vanguard, add this card back to your hand. So this card is also good with keeping itself being resourceful. If one of your attacks manages to hit, bring it back to your hand. Next up for the grade 3s. Now, grade 1s. Sorry about that. I run one Wingo. This not needed for the deck. I just needed it for space so I can have some good grade 1s to ride. And if I have Blaster Blade out, 5k power extra when it boosts, no big deal. I'm going to replace this card with something else later down the line. But here's the card that I kind of like in the deck. 3, Pongal. I'm probably going to replace Wingo with a fourth Pongo. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, Pongo when called, you soul charge 1. If it's a trigger, it gets 5k power. Now here's the thing. In a deck like this, no one has run this. But here's the reason why I do. It helps set up, mainly for your soul. If you ride into Arcsaver Dragon, if you do in fact have 4 soul thanks to Pongo, you can keep a blaster in your soul to call with Arcsaver's ability. Not to mention, if the card you added to your soul was in fact a blaster, if you ride into Blaster Blade, you can soul blast that card in order to have it in the drop zone for Arcsaver's loss of grade ability. And you can also combo that off with Blaster Arrow's ability to search for Arcsaver, thus getting you the cards you need to ride Arcsaver on your following turn. Now, a deck like this Now, obviously, this deck has a lot of setup and a lot of combos, but if you build it the right way and you play it the right way, it'll be an extremely devastating deck. So that's it for the grade 1s. And obviously, Glein is the starter. And I run 4 draws, 8 crits, and 4 heals. And yeah, that is my blaster deck profile for standard. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to see other decks, let me know. If I'm able to build those, I will make those decks, and I will do those videos. I will be uploading more frequently in the next couple of months, especially since a lot of sets are coming out that I really, really want. But anyway, hope you guys have an awesome day. See you around.